and welcome to the Sikh Women's Aid podcast called Fulkari. My name's Shadish and I'm here joined by my sisters Minu Sangu and Sukhi Kaur. So sorry we've been away for a little while. It's been a really busy time for us and we've been raring to get back to doing these podcasts to talk to all of our listeners. And so here we are. I managed to get back together and meet up. How are we all?
We're all good. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. But like you said, Sadish, it's been so difficult just in terms of the casework and the work that we're doing, just to find time to sit down and actually talk to our listeners and our supporters about what is going on in the world of Sikh Women's Aid, what we're seeing. So it is, I agree with you, Sadish, it's really nice to be back.
Brilliant. And so obviously you mentioned casework, and so our first topic in this sort of season of our Fulkari podcast is quite a difficult subject matter, and it's really important that we talk about this because just in the last few months we've lost another couple of sisters in the community. We lost Kamaljeet Kaur in December 2023, leaving behind 2 children, and we also lost Paramjeet Gosal Gill as well in London. And we don't know much about Paramjeet at the moment. There's not much information out there other than her husband's been arrested with regards to this death. So we don't know exactly what's happened, only what's in the media. But with regards to Kamaljeet, that we've had a lot more involvement, haven't we? And been supporting the children as well. And really today is about what is happening in our community. I mean, Wolverhampton has lost, we've lost 3 women in 4 years in Wolverhampton. And we know that according to the census, Wolverhampton has one of the largest Sikh populations outside of London. So we know there's a problem that's happening there. And we're getting referrals, but not to the extent that we need. And definitely we need to do some more work there. But particularly this issue around the murders of women in our community. It's a really serious issue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Sadish. I mean, Sadish and I, we've both done the domestic homicide review training. So anyone listening in, Sadish and I are actually qualified to chair reviews that examine what led up to a domestic homicide. And the patterns are just getting predictable now. And for me, the bigger question is that what we often find is there are so many opportunities to disrupt, to help in some cases, but then in other cases, it's like the domestic abuse is contained within the 4 walls of the house between the perpetrator, the victim, and often just the children. So even like close like siblings, parents, they're actually not aware of what is happening to their loved ones. So I know, Sadish, you mentioned to me that when families post domestic homicide have spoken, and I've spoken to families as well, and you can see that real distress amongst the siblings and the parents thinking, "Sanu to pata nahi si bhi ye sara kuch hunda si." So how is this issue becoming so, I mean, for me, I'm just like, is it so normalized now that what you would see as red flags, or what we would see as red flags being professionally trained, that in the armed community, the scary thing for me is, has domestic abuse just become so normalized that now we're seeing the deaths because it's just domestic abuse is now part and parcel of being a Punjabi woman?
Firstly, I think it's brilliant that we're on that level of being on the homicide team, which is brilliant. But then on the flip side, how are we even doing this sort of work? Like 2024, and we're on boards where we're talking about Sikh women getting murdered by their husbands. I think for me, that's disturbing. I've got 3 daughters; they're going to get married, and I'd want somewhere where they've got that safe space and they can talk about what's happening with them. Oh, this isn't right, but there's nothing out there where people are yelling out help. No one has, and we're at this point now where you're sitting on like homicides.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, with regards to this particular case with Kamaljeet, one of our staff and I attended her the hearing for the sentencing because her husband pleaded guilty in the end. Initially, he'd pleaded self-defense, which I don't understand how anybody, having inflicted so much injury on another person, how they could have even thought that they might get away with this by claiming it was self-defense. But he pleaded guilty in the end. And I think what really made us, me and our staff member who attended, upset and angry was the fact that he only got 16 and a half years for taking a mother away from her 2 children, a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old, who in their victim impact statement, the son talked about how his mum is never going to see him get married. She's never going to see him graduate. She won't ever see her daughter get married. She won't ever meet her grandchildren. It was so heartbreaking, this victim impact statement. And yet, having heard all of this, the sentence for life is 20 years. And because he pleaded guilty, he got an automatic reduction, which he's apparently, as a perpetrator, entitled to because he pleaded guilty. So it's really heartbreaking that, I was just in the newspapers in the last couple of days, like there were some things around some violent, behavior from somebody. And somebody got 16 years for being violent. And this man got 16 and a half years
for murder,
for taking the life of someone. I just don't understand the system and how it makes decisions on these sentences. None of it makes sense around how somebody who's been violent towards someone can get 16 years and 13 years and whatever. And this murder case, he only got 16 and a half years with the reduction.
I mean, it's despicable. And I remember you telling me about this because I was meant to be at the hearing and I just couldn't make it that day. And then when you shared with me about the defense solicitor, so the defense solicitor for the perpetrator was actually a Sikh Panjabi man with Singh in his name.
Yep.
And this is something that just plays on repeat in my head, that a man who has Singh in his name is defending a murderer. I think it's despicable. If you want to do that kind of job, I think you just need to remove Singh from your name, because if you're defending the indefensible, and some of the comments that he made during representing his client, yes, he acknowledged that the perpetrator had done something wrong, but then calling nearly 20 years of violent domestic abuse towards his wife, because all this came out in the pre-sentencing hearings, where the children were the only ones who were witness to the level of violence he subjected Kamaljeet to. And if we hadn't have been sat there, we would never have known. And this prosecution barrister had the nerve to call this low-level DV.
Is it defense barrister?
Sorry, I do apologize, defense barrister. But then those words kept playing in my head. So if a woman, if a barrister in court is trying to play down 20 years of physical violence against his wife as low-level DV, what do these people think high-level DV is then? It's like, are women just expected to tolerate so much shit that murder is then considered high-level DV? So is it where the thinking for me is so warped? And this case and everything that led up to her murder, the fact that she couldn't confide in anyone, she didn't tell anyone, it really makes me think that this is in 2024, a woman born here, and she's felt that she couldn't tell anyone. So that kind of says to me, where are we as a community? Now, Wolverhampton, I'm from Wolverhampton, it's my hometown. So I grew up there. I grew up in the generation of Kurimar. I saw it perpetrated in my family. So Kurimar's female infanticide. This is that obsession over a boy child. Now, I think what we're seeing now is the repercussions of that, this obsession with boys. And then soon as this boy is born, somehow thinking, right, our duty as parents are done. So we then put all this kind of this pressure on the women when they're young girls of what they have to endure. And it's not just what we teach them, it's what they witness in their own parental settings. But then, I mean, I'm going to bring something else in, but we've normalized, male promiscuity, male violence. I mean, I'm not sure if people have watched the Chamkila film, and some of his lyrics are surrounding about how a man is not a man unless he's hitting his woman. Then we had the likes of A.S. Kang with his Valeti Boliyan talking about women who were saying that, oh, my husband's stepping out with the Gauri Gawandan. I mean, it became so normalized that we were unconsciously dancing to these songs at wedding, absolutely normalizing male promiscuity. But yet, if a woman decides that she doesn't want to be with a domestic abuser, a woman wants to choose, she's this, so I'm just, for me, it's like all that now is culminating to a community where men feel that we can do whatever the hell we want. And I'm talking about perpetrating men, happily married women, you know, and we know it's not all men, and we have amazing male allies who support our work. But this perpetrating generation of men, I call them a rot. They're a cancer in our community. And they've not just been enabled by their fathers, they've been enabled by mothers too. And, you know, we can go into all the arguments about what led to that. But right now we have little boys trapped in the bodies of men. And then I would almost say we've got women with the wisdom of grandmothers in the bodies of women. So psychologically, you've got little boys married to grandmas in terms of wisdom and intellect. And then all this man has is that when something doesn't go his way, lashing out like a child, beating, hitting.
Tantrum.
Absolutely, tantrums.
Tantrums.
I mean, we've seen some of these cases. I mean, there was another one that we've been dealing with recently. We've been advising on another domestic homicide review. And, you know, we've seen not just with this one case that we're advising on, but historically as well, another one in Wolverhampton where after he'd murdered his wife, it came out that his first wife also died of suspicious circumstances in India. And you start to wonder, like, that these men, are they serial killers? And this one other one that I've been dealing with where I've been supporting and advising on it in a up north it is, that one too, where was married to a woman who at 25 years old suddenly died in India, and she was fit and healthy. She was a sports player. And then after she died, the family thought, well, there's a baby, you know, she had a son, and they basically asked the younger sister to marry her jija because they thought, who better to look after the child than the Masi? So she agreed. There was no pressure involved in any of this. But now he's murdered her, and now the parents are questioning what happened to their first daughter as well. This man, potentially, we don't know for sure because obviously there's no way of checking. The cremation would have taken place for the first daughter. But there's no way of knowing for sure, but there are questions about whether this man has now killed both sisters.
Yep.
You know, this is serious, isn't it? There's another one in Wolverhampton. There was a young girl who she studied in Wolverhampton. She didn't live there, but she was from, I think, Telford originally. She was one of the stories that we told last year. Like, her dad had abused his wife and ended up going into prison for a number of years, came out, found out that his daughter was dating someone outside of the community and decided to murder his daughter. So it's just a case of like what is going on? Why do these people think that they can do what they're doing? Do you know what I mean? Why do they feel that they can just take someone's life in this way? Just because they're jealous, angry, they're obsessed.
I think for me,
what
it's
would
this
be going on in their head,
Yes,
like when they're doing it. Like, is it a control thing?
Yeah.
Are they getting a kick out of having that control, killing the person?
I think it's that. I think it's this obsessive need to control and dominate women.
Yeah.
And then when the woman starts to then rebel or like fight back or try and find a voice.
Just to have a life where they got choice. It's not even like we're not saying that they want to go out clubbing and drinking and all the rest of it, which is what people assume in the community because they say Jangina si, Ferdi sigi, you know, all of these things. All it is that they want to go out and they want to make friends. They want to have a social life. They want to
have a life.
They want to have a life, exactly.
A normal life.
Normal life, yeah, exactly.
I mean, I can't imagine not being able to go out, meet my friends, go and see my mum, my brother.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine how that would be to be told after you wake up, you've got to do this, 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 and this, and if you don't, you're going to get battered.
Yeah,
I really can't.
Yeah.
No.
You know, it's.
Yeah.
You're
right though, Min, because I think a lot of these men, that's what they do, don't they? They stop the women from associating with their family, with their friends. That's part of the control, isn't it? Stop them from seeing, because they're scared that if they go and see family, then maybe they'll talking and revealing what's going on,
and even
so
going
on.
out to work as well.
Yeah,
it's like they're controlled where they can work. I think
that's interesting you say that, because with Kamaljeet's case, they both worked at the same place, and he did exercise control over her at work. It came out in the final hearing. And then even the employers, like, you almost think that domestic violence right now is on par, like almost with terrorism, in terms of it is the most reported crime. It is one of the most serious offences out there. We're now saying 1 in 3 women. And I just want people to think about that statistics, 1 in 3. If you're out in a social gathering with your friends, there's someone within your friend that either has at some point in their life or is experiencing domestic abuse. And I think the thing that really shocks me the most is, and I'm going to give a case study here. So if viewers have not watched The Push, which is a Channel 4 documentary about the murder of Fawzia Jawad. And what I think that documentary will really stay with me, because she was the only daughter of her parents. She was so loved.
Only child, wasn't she?
She was the only child of her parents. She was so loved as a daughter. She consented to have a marriage with this man. So it was kind of like love arranged. They'd met each other. And then, you know, there was no warning signs prior to that. Parents were like she was a solicitor. And then this man, the moment he married her, I mean, what you see in the documentary is awful. So, you know, I'm not going to ruin the documentary. Please watch it and find out the awful kind of journey of what Fawzia went through. But then I look at her mum, and I met her mum at a conference. And this mum is so broken, but she's like, I'm going to change the law. I am going to do something so no other daughter is lost. Now, we saw something similar like that with the family of Sergi Atwal, and we are in touch with them, you know, Sergi Atwal's niece, Savji Atwal from True Honor. We do keep in touch with these people, and these people campaigned so hard to bring justice to Sergi. And it was like, you know, a legal precedent where they secured a conviction against the husband and the mother-in-law, because the mother-in-law planned it. So we've got a case. Look, I mean, it's out there, and the only people not acknowledging it, not developing a community response to it, is us as a people. Now, Sadish, you know how unwelcome we are in certain places by our own community. Since we've started, you know, we have the overwhelming love and support from, you know, the armed Sikh Panjabi, who are like, finally this work needed to be done. But we have that real patriarchal/matriarchal element of the community that still see us as the problem, but they will happily invite the family paedophile, the family abuser who's on his 3rd wife, and no one knows what happened to the first 2 wives. He's welcome to family functions. And we've enabled this dysfunctional family setting where it enables the perpetrator. And then what we do is, when a victim decides to fight back or leave or make choices for herself, she's not only leaving the partner, some of these women, they lose their entire community, because it's like, eko kar nahi sambh hoya. But the man is never held to account for his failure of being a husband, for his failure of being a father. And that is the common theme I tend to see. Like, we had the domestic homicide in East London. And it was one of the most disturbing things, because this man was a committee member. He was a 70-year-old committee member at a Gurdwara. He had murdered his wife, and he admitted it. So it's a very clear-cut murder case. And there were young women my age that were criticizing us for sharing the police press release around that murder, saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Uncle G was so lovely. He was so calm. And I remember reading these comments thinking,
Uncle G just admitted to murder.
And not just...
he was really calm.
Well, it's not even... It's like the way he murdered her, like, trigger warning, but he beat her to death with a baseball bat. You know, his wife, who was in her 70s, who was retired, worked with him all her life. And the only thing she used to do was go and visit the local women's group, and that's where she had her social setting. Her, you know, they'd go on trips and things like that. And him being this lovely person who they said used to give them advice and used to give them guidance and so on, he beat her to death with I should say, the Guru Granth Sahib in the home as well. He'd they had it in their home, like upstairs. So whilst he had that, so this is an Amritdhari man who went on to do this in that home. It's how does your conscience allow you to do that in that setting?
I mean, I would advise listeners to really read our report, because one thing we did in our publications was separate the faith from the culture. There is nothing in Sikhi that forces anyone to stay with someone who is causing them harm. And what that man was, he was not a good Sikh at all. These are what I call dress-up plastic Sikhs who look the part, and in front of other people, because we know this about perpetrators, how they are with their victims in compared to how they present themselves in the community. And that's what we saw with this man. Oh, Uncle G was so lovely. And I remember having, a very calm conversation with some of these people, because I genuinely wanted to understand their thought process. And I was like, have you read this press release? This is actually from the Met Police that we've shared.
Yeah.
So this man has admitted. And then the response I got was, you're putting two and two together. Who knows what she was putting him through?
Yeah.
So somehow a woman has invited her own murder.
Yeah.
And these were young women. I mean, and then I had phone calls from people saying, you need to be careful about how you're presenting this. And I'm like, we're not presenting anything. We're telling you what the police have said. This man walked into a station and admitted murdering his wife.
Yeah.
And he was a committee member at the Gurdwara. Someone who held privilege, who held position of trust.
Yeah.
Someone who garnered so much respect. I'm not even going to say respect, because when this man has murdered someone, he's still gone. For me, the fact he was still garnering respect, that there were even males saying, poor man, who knows what she was putting him through. Maybe he just finally snapped.
Well, the level of victim blaming in our community, I mean, it's always been that way, because women get blamed for everything. No matter what they do, you get blamed for if your children do something wrong because it's your fault, you didn't bring them up properly. You get blamed if, there's a breakup in the family or there's arguments. It's all down to her, isn't it? It's, and so it's a case of, there was a video that was on Instagram, and I literally only saw it yesterday. I think one of you shared it in our WhatsApp group, and that was a woman in the 70s who her husband had brought her to the UK, and she was like stitching. Must have been part of a documentary, and she was stitching kapre as they did back then, because it's one of the things they could do. And she said, well, she was basically in Punjabi was saying, what can you do? Like your husband, yes, he brought you here, but then he goes off and he's got a relationship with somebody else and basically just leaves you behind. She goes, I'm a woman. She goes, what am I going to do? I can't do anything about it. So he'll come and go, obviously, when he feels like it, while he's also gallivanting around with somebody else, in the community. So in 50 years, if that was the 70s, in 50 years, what's changed? Like, nothing?
I don't think it is, because when we look at the casework, it's like now what we had back then, I see, is that forced marriage. But the force of that marriage was never felt by the man. The force was felt by the woman. She had to stay. She had to have his children whilst he was out gallivanting with other women.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't even know
She
about...
had to look after the parents as well.
Absolutely.
And the younger siblings, maybe, So it was everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut that in. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely fine, because it's a valid point. But then today, what we're now seeing is this unsatisfied. I mean, I'm talking about the abusing population here, not the armed Sikh Panjabi man, है ना? But what you're now seeing is like this excess. So like, they're getting married and then they're bored, and this kind of, real dismissal of what the wife, and almost like once the wife and children are here, life is no longer exciting. Then it's like, it's this sort of sense of, I'm absolutely comfortable and fine with cheating on my wife, having a different life outside. But then when a woman wants to go to like on holiday, like with that case I was talking about in East London, she was actually due to go on holiday with her community group, and she was killed 3 days before that holiday. And I just remember thinking, I wonder what must have been going on in his head.
Yeah.
Let's forget the fact that the philandering he must have done in his... I mean, we don't know anything yet.
Yeah.
But you can only imagine the philandering he did. And it's like the nerve of her, if she's going on this holiday, she must be having, because they apply their own dirty mindset to their wives.
Yeah.
This wife has been nothing but loyal, faithful, raised their children, worked in a job with them. And there is that, that generation that's gone before us. I mean, we said this when we launched Sikh Women's Aid. We have lost one, possibly two generations of women to domestic abuse. We've lost them.
Yeah.
Now, if we don't start to see some significant shifts, I think one of the main reasons we do this podcast is so, like, when you're listening to this, really look at the relationships around you with a fresh pair of eyes. Because sometimes we become, like, it's that unconscious conditioning that there could be some real things going on around you, but it's easier to look away. It's easier not to get involved. It's like it's not our business. But I think that's what's got us to this crisis. We've forgotten that sense of community, or we only remember community at the strangest of times. It's like we have the community for weddings. We have the community for when a child is born. We have the community when there's a funeral or a birth. But where is that community post, my husband has messed my life up, my husband is doing this, or in some cases my wife is doing this. So where is that support network post divorce, post separation? How do we give community back to women when all that falls apart? So I'd really urge listeners to kind of go back into your communities, your families, your extended, and just really take a good look round. Because I'm going to go back to that statistic, 1 in 3, we know people who are suffering, and they might just be too scared to say anything. And to be honest, our gut instincts normally tell us when something doesn't feel right, and we ignore that at our peril. How many lives could we save because we just saw something and said something and just made a referral or just pass on our details?
Absolutely. I think that's what the key thing is. If you're worried about somebody, literally at Sikh Women's Aid, that's all you have to do. You just Google that and up will come our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter, our TikTok and so on. So literally, and it's got all our contact details on there. Just give them that information, and then if somebody wants to contact us, they can. And it's really important to say that none of us are in the business of splitting up families or forcing a woman to leave a relationship if she doesn't want to. Contacting Sikh Women's Aid only means that you will get to understand what your choices and your options are. That's all we're here to do, and then we will support you in whatever you decide. There's women who say, I'm going to, we supported them and they've said, I want to go back. I want to try and make it work. It's absolutely their prerogative. We've never, ever forced anyone to do anything against their will. So all we do is educate, and that's what it's about at the end of the day. So we have to wrap the podcast up now. It's been a really important discussion. And I hope that when you hear this, maybe it will make you think about somebody else, a relative, or a friend, that maybe you can ask them, like, are they okay when you see them feeling or looking a bit down, or maybe not, maybe they're behaving in a different way than they usually would, or maybe they've sort of, lost their vibrancy and, their sort of, the fun in them. It's important to ask if they're okay, and if there's anything that they want to talk about, that you make yourself available to them. And as I said, pass on Sikh Women's Aid details, and you never know when you might save somebody's life by doing that.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we will be talking to you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.